We've got Rob the Bank joining us in today's episode. So Rob really is a jack of all trades by his own definition. He's worked in all corners of the music industry. He's presented on BBC Radio 1 for over a decade. He started Bestival and most recently Camp Bestival with his wife Josie the Bank. And we talk about everything from throwing parties, running labels, falling into radio by accident, and how to launch and run a music festival. So lots of insight in here, loads of takeaways from Rob. He's an incredible guy, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. So Robbie, thank you so much for joining us on Business Keeps on Dancing. I know you've had a long time in the music industry. You've spent over 3 decades actually in this industry, and in that time you've added music journalist, club promoter, label owner, DJ, BBC radio presenter and festival owner to your CV. And it doesn't sound like you've ever needed a CV by the sounds of it, but it's a pretty impressive one, I think, if you put one together. But what I find really interesting is that there's not many people that I can think of that have really had this quite unique experience of a really 360 degree view of the industry, and you've really been there, done it, and got the t-shirt with every aspect of music and DJing and events. But more importantly, not many people have actually made the sacrifices you've made, jumped over the hurdles that you've had to jump over. So really what I want to dig into today is all of the lessons and everything you've learned really along the way of that incredible career so far.
Crikey, that sounds quite heavy, and I feel quite old listening to that intro, but thank you.
I thought it'd be good to start off really what the first point into events and the world of music was for you, because I know it's it's becoming a lot more common practice for young people to get into a career in music now. But I know even when I was younger and when I was in university, it didn't feel like a solid career path. And I went off and bought decks when I was in uni and came home and told my mum, and she was like, what are decks, like what's happening, are you going to drop out of uni? But it's interesting to see how your journey started really, and what the first point was.
Yeah, well, it probably was with decks as well. Age 16, getting my first set of Technics decks, saving up a lot of money back in those days, and listening to John Peel on the radio, buying my first set of decks, joining a indie band with my mates at the age of kind of 15, 16. And weirdly, I'm teaching my 15-year-old son's learning guitar now, and it's sort of bringing back exactly that sort of entry into music and just seeing the way that he is such a magpie with music, and 1 minute he's playing Radiohead, the next minute he's playing punk, the next minute he's playing grime, and sort of everything in between, and it's just amazing to see. It still happens 40 years later, the second time around.
Okay, Brill. So what was the first point that you felt like this could be a job? What was the first point where it was like, this is my career now, this is what I'm going to do?
It definitely wasn't ever on my radar to have a job in music. I never thought about that. I went to a school where I did like languages at A level. I went to Goldsmiths, did a French degree, so it was never on. It wasn't like I was it was written in the stars for this to happen. It was as I always say, a happy accident. One of many of a series of happy accidents that's sort of gone through my life and career. And I was always into music. From being in my dad's brass band at the age of 10 or 11 through to the John Peel, getting the decks, doing my first DJ gig, probably age 17, and then it wasn't until I'd actually got to London and I was suddenly immersed in South London kind of jungle and drum and bass were just emerging, and it was rave was happening and trance and all these genres that sound kind of old now but were sort of brand new then. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll sort of go that way, but it was never even thought about. It was just like, I did my degree, but while I was doing my degree, I was starting my first club, starting my record label, DJing more and more, and realizing that maybe that you could make music that way.
And how long did that
make money that way, not make music that way?
How long did it take you to kind of earn your stripes in the world of running events and being in the world of clubs?
Well, as with probably a lot of people that you interview, you have the sort of imposter syndrome, and I still feel like I'm kind of earning them. I still feel like I'm definitely learning as a DJ, definitely learning as a broadcaster. Um, and you only really are happy with the last event you put on, and and the next one that you're going to do. So it's weird. I still feel like that kind of 18-year-old, really, like with that sort of hunger to do those things. I don't feel like I've been there and done it. But yeah, in terms of a level of notoriety, I wouldn't say fame necessarily, but I suppose when I got onto Radio One, then things obviously stepped up a level. Suddenly I was a Radio 1 DJ. This was pre-internet days, if anyone remember that. There was no Spotify, there was barely any email, there was no social media. So, Radio 1 and other radio stations were the only place that you could really hear new music. So suddenly I was one of these purveyors of new music, particularly in the sort of electronic and sort of post club genre. So and that was definitely a big step up. And suddenly, the bookings were rolling in, and I was sort of a DJ as well as a broadcaster.
How does a gig like BBC Radio 1 turn up at your door? How did that transpire?
Yeah, well, again, another happy accident. So I was running my club Sunday Best, which pretty much went on to become Bestival. It was a club for a maximum of 250 people, but that was if everyone was totally jammed in. It was normally about 100 people in an old barn on a dirty old road in South London, and there was anyone from Andy Weatherall to Harvey to Groove Armada, Fatboy Slim. Bjork would be at the bar. David Byrne would be sitting in the corner playing chess with someone. It was a pretty cool club, if I say so myself, and that got fairly well known in London first, and then nationally as the place to sort of embrace this kind of chill out genre, which is a kind of dirty word now, but at the time was really a nice different angle for music. And so yeah, that got really recognised, and Radio One decided they wanted to sort of reflect this new sort of genre, which wasn't banging trance or house or jungle, and so a sort of after hours vibe, and there was a show called The Blue Room, and myself and Chris Coco were chosen to host that, which was absolutely terrifying. I've been in the radio studio once at Kiss FM as a guest. I've never presented a radio show of my life. I was completely crap, and sort of somehow got through my pilot, and suddenly I had a weekly show on Radio One, which was incredible and like I say, terrifying.
And did you have anyone mentoring you through that process, or was it very much learn on the job as you go along?
I had my manager Ben, my wife Josie, who I don't know if she's my wife then or my girlfriend, probably my girlfriend. But no one said, right, Robbie, you literally walked into Radio One, and this was the days when they had record decks in their cassette machines, and it was modern, but it was modern for like 1990s, and I think compact discs had probably just sort of come around. I sound so old now, don't I? But that it was very sort of stop start, press this button, do that, and you had to do everything yourself, which you still kind of do in Radio One, which is great. But I was like, oh, what, you're expecting me to control all these things and talk at the same time? This is bonkers. So and try and be entertaining. So I kept the talking to a minimum and just played the music, and that's kind of, I suppose, what I became known for.
So that's such a huge opportunity to come off the back of Sunday Best. Do you feel like club culture, to me, it almost feels like a rite of passage into the world of music, and it's almost like that's always a starting point for a lot of journeys of the guests that come onto the show. Do you feel like can you just jump into radio? Can you just jump into festivals, or does it always need to start off grassroots in the club?
Yeah, sure. I suppose, a lot of radio broadcasters will come from a hospital radio background or a local radio, or that, they'll have earned their spurs kind of doing that kind of thing, and always know, like Scott Mills, I think from Radio One, I think he's like that. He's just always done that radio thing. I had no intentions of being on radio, and so sort of fell into it, and so that can happen. And I know I was very lucky and in the right place at the right time. But for people that are listening that are like, I'd love to have broadcasting career or a job in broadcasting, you know, whether it's an engineer or whatever, I don't think you have to, you know, you could be doing a physics degree and still do that, obviously. But what I always come back to is that I did 6 years, well, kind of 4 to 5 years of work experience on a music magazine where I didn't ask for any money. I did get paid for for pieces that I wrote, but I just turned up every day. I was always the first one there, last one to leave, and my sort of emphasis on internships, work placements, whatever they're called these days, is just, you know, that's what you want to be doing. You want to be getting experience in that field, and impressing people with your diligence and your turning up for work on time. And I honestly feel like about half of my career is down to the fact that I turned up on time and I was always there, sort of sober and slightly helpful. And yeah, so, you know, I saw so many people kind of muck up by just not turning up. So I think that was a lot to do with it. And that's probably why I was still on Radio 1 12 years later, because I generally didn't let them down.
So after a year, you know, you found your feet with it. Is radio something at that point? Did you feel like radio was something you'd do forever? Did you envisage what could come next? Like, did you have a master plan at that point, or was it just taking each day as it comes?
I mean, you know, going back to the imposter syndrome, I think the first 4 years I literally was like, this has got to be my last week. There's no way. You know, I never did anything massively wrong, and I knew that I had a good fan base, but I literally was like, why am I here? You know, why me? So, you know, and that went on for a few years, and then I kind of got bedded in. But yeah, I mean, I was doing a weekly specialist show. Obviously, one of the sort of high and low points of that was covering when John Peel sadly died. So, you know, there was some sort of very big sort of stepping stones along the way where things sort of changed within that world. But I never thought this is going to be me forever, because I was only doing, you know, a weekly specialist show. I never wanted to be a, you know, get the breakfast show or something like that. I'd bore people to tears doing something like that. So I love talking about music and I love playing great music, but yeah, it was never a talky thing.
You talk about imposter syndrome, and it's almost like a paradox, isn't it? Because by the very virtue of having imposter syndrome, it means you're doing something you've not done before, which means, you know, you're probably not going to be qualified to do it until you've actually done it. But it also shows that you know, the fact that you've gone through so many stages in your career and you've tried so many different roles, it means, you know, it shows you've not really been afraid of risk and not really been afraid of change. Is that something, you know, when this opportunity comes around, you seem to have, you know, you've felt that worry of imposter syndrome, but you've kind of battled through it, through kind of, you know,
Yeah,
taking a big risk.
yeah, and I wouldn't, you know, the imposter syndrome is there, but I wouldn't like to paint a picture of being a meek kind of, you know, slightly reticent person. I wasn't also cocky and sort of in people's faces, but I was somewhere in the middle, that I was very, very enthusiastic about what I was doing. You know, wanted to succeed at it, but inwardly had a massive fear that I was going to totally cock it up. And, you know, that's gone through everything I've done, whether it's the record label, the festivals. You know, booking a festival is one of the most, I don't want to say it's one of the most stressful jobs, because there's coal mining and, you know, deep sea diving and stuff, but it's one of the most you know, inwardly introspective, worrisome things, because you book this lineup on your own, well, normally on your own, and then you unleash it to everyone, and, you know, thousands of people can have a pop at you for what you've done on your own, and you don't necessarily consult with other people on it. So, you know, that's always been there, but yeah, at the same time, I think enthusiasm and, you know, just getting the job done has sort of got me through it as well.
So transition seems to be a bit of a theme with your journey so far. You know, you've gone from running club events, you started a label under Sunday Best as well. You then went into radio and broadcasting. What was the next step from there, and how did that naturally evolve?
Yeah, so I mean, at one point in my early 20s, you know, through to nearly 30, I suppose, I was, you know, running the record label, running the club, DJing around the world, and then starting, you know, and that all sort of was keeping me very, very busy. I was also working at a music magazine, so I was sort of assistant editor of that and clubs editor, so I was whizzing around the country, going to nightclubs, being wined and dined by club promoters wanting me to write nice things about their clubs, like the Gatecrasher era and Creamfields. That was, I was there every week in the box with all open folded stuff. It was completely amazing and insane and quite tiring. But then that all sort of funneled through to Festival. I suppose me and Josie had been going to Glastonbury for a few years, and then we just kind of felt maybe we should have a crack at this ourselves. It was early 2000s, and it just felt like it was time. There was a gap in the market for this new sort of what we coined as a boutique festival, and Festival kind of helped launch that whole genre of festivals.
So that idea seems to have come quite naturally. You weren't really planning for it, but as things are progressing, the opportunity comes up. I find the idea of everyone starting out as some sort of novice really interesting, because even the most successful people in the industry have started out as a beginner at some point. You've had your first time DJing, you've had your first time on radio, first time running a festival. I think is a different beast, isn't it? Was there a handbook, like when it gets to that very first festival you've put on, where did you start, the bookings, making sure the sound system right, the marketing, where did you learn from, who did you learn from, what was that process like?
Yeah, no, there was no handbook, and if there had been one, we were probably not so cocky, but so cocksure that we probably wouldn't have read it. I mean, we obviously had learnt by osmosis from going to Glastonbury and WOMAD and Tribal Gathering, big raves and stuff. As much going to raves as going to festivals, and normally jumping the fence and kind of didn't have the money to go into them. So I was very much coming at them from a punter's point of view and seeing how they worked from a punter's point of view. But we just had to do it. It's like a baptism of fire. I find it absolutely amazing and also hilarious that there are entire degree courses where people sit there for 3 years learning how to be a festival promoter. I do think it's amazing. I'm not being condescending about that at all. It's fantastic. I've got lots of friends who work in festivals who are also lecturers, so I can see the massive bonus of that. But a lot of it, like you say, is learning on your feet. And I learned to be a radio DJ by just getting in the studio and being thrown in there. The same with festivals, the same with running a club. So it took time to do it, and I think that's why I'm still here doing it, because I did do the 10,000 hours or whatever that sort of phrase is of putting in the time. I think if you did I'm not saying if you do a 3-year degree course at festivals, you're not going to be qualified, but if you haven't also been doing the sort of internships and the on the ground stuff, then you'd walk into a festival and not have a blooming clue what was going on, because it's just one of the most crazy atmospheres for working in. So I think it's just kind of sticking to what you want to do, and whether that's studying to do it or whether it's getting stuck in with someone who's already doing it.
The first festival was 2004, is that correct?
Well, I'm looking around my room at my posters and hoping that's correct, because I'm so bad at dates. Sometimes I'll say, 2014, that was the first festival, or 1998, or it was 2004, yeah.
So early 2000s, that very first year that you ran it, I imagine festivals looked a lot different back then, both in terms of kind of, the production capabilities, but also of what customers expect to experience now. And I think the difference probably between 2004 and now is there's there's a lot more expectation on the whole experience to be incredible from start to finish. With that first festival taking place, let's say early 2000s, what did you learn from that first year? Like, what went right, what went wrong, what were you kind of still finding on your feet, as you say, kind of learning as you do?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, myself and Josie and our partners, John and Ziggy, we'd come up with this harebrained scheme, and then suddenly, barely 6 months after we'd drunkenly decided we were going to put on a festival, we were opening the gates on a festival on a lovely sunny day in September on the Isle of Wight, not having a real clue what was going to happen over the next 3-4 days. We borrowed some money, we got everything set up, we'd sort of done it properly, but begged, borrowed and stealed and stolen and got some got some good headliners, and we'd sold 4,000 tickets. So we were pretty shocked at that amount. We thought that was absolutely amazing. And I remember standing on stage with Basement Jacks, just looking out over 4,000 people, feeling like I was Michael Levis looking out over 100,000 people at Glastonbury. It just felt monumentally big. Obviously, 6 or 7 years later, that was 50,000 people, and it was a whole different kettle of fish. So it was a small start, but it was and it was mental. It was absolutely mental. Josie was also apart from being an illustrator and a lot of other things, she was running her own bar in London. So she was running the bars. We had like handfuls of coins, for change, in the back of golf carts going up the hill, falling off, money everywhere. We had like people burning toilet rolls into the woods, trying to set the woods on fire for a laugh. We had illegal sound systems popping up here and there. We had less than, nowhere near the amount of security that we needed. We were just literally, I don't even think we had walkie-talkies. We had people calling us on our very ancient mobile phones saying, Robbie, you needed the main station, you needed here, the toilets are overflowing, you needed there, you needed there. And it was just, literally constant. I remember the first night, me and Josie crawling into the teepee that we'd stupidly thought we'd have a nice sleep in at about 4 a.m, and it was covered in giant black spiders for a start, so we didn't get any sleep because of that. And then we had about 2 hours sleep, and then someone was like, Robbie, what are you doing? Come on, the gates are opening again. And it was just like, oh Jesus! But it was also the most fun ever. It was like being having your own festival. It's like being at your favourite festival. But then it dawned on you that you were actually running it, and so the reality of having 7 pints of beer, on the Friday is like, I can't do that again, because what happens if that same thing happens? So it very quickly turned into a job, and I don't feel sad about that, because that's just the way we chose to do it. But as any festival promoter will tell you, you're not, you're rarely larking around backstage drinking champagne and chatting to artists. You're normally out front dealing with some mental situation.
I feel like I can't go to a festival at all now without, even if I'm going as a punter, I'm just worrying about what everyone else is worrying about backstage, because I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So
even when a festival's going very well, there's always some drama happening. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. And I always thought after the first one, right, that's the sort of identikit, or whatever it's called, that's the formula, that's how we're going to always do it. It was so good. And then you quickly have to change everything, and then it's an entirely different beast the year after. So you never quite relax.
So at this point, did you have a team around you around the first year of the festival, or was it just yourself and Josie?
Yeah, no, we had me and Josie and our partners, John and Ziggy, and we sort of, that's where we started building our small team. I mean, Keith, who booked the artist with me on the first year, he's still with me now. He's come back, so 20 odd years later, he's still there. And we've been through a lot of different people, but not in a bad way. We've hopefully always been somewhere where people love to go and work. Fun but hard working people, and it's been a mad old ride.
So when you start getting into year 2 of the festival and starting to scale up festival and then eventually Camp Bestival later on, how did it get so big? How did you get a good reputation? I imagine social media marketing was even around back then. I'd have to do a bit of a thought on when social media would have boomed up. But how did you kind of grow it? What was the secret?
Well, I remember at one of the festivals, and I don't know what year Twitter was born, but I remember Bruce, our social media guy, who's still our social media guy, and he was doing marketing then, came up to me with an old, some old Android phone and said, right, Robbie, there's this thing called Twitter. You need to write something interesting about the festival into here, and it will go out to everyone. I was like, what are you talking about, mate? That is the shittest idea ever. I'm not doing that. And that, so yeah, I actually, that was my first encounter with social media. Instagram was a long way off still then, but so yeah, we back in the day, then it was half-page adverts in the NME, blagging some lines in the Evening Standard or the Sun or whatever. and after the festival, you didn't get hit by a barrage of criticism or praise. You got letters. So 3 weeks after the festival, you'd be opening letters saying, "Oh, I don't think the stage was quite in the right place," or when Florence and the Machine came on, blah blah blah. It was mad. You used to open letters and then sometimes reply to people about their festival experiences, which is just absolutely unthinkable now. But I think going back to your question, sorry, I was digressing, but I think we just hit a very good seam of sort of our lifestyle sort of boutique bent of festival was something that people were maybe looking for. Obviously, there was Glastonbury, which is the mothership. We never kind of get anything as good as that, but it was it just seemed that festival came along at the right time. Secret Garden launched at the same time as us. That was obviously a similar sort of similar kind of ethos and idea. The Big Chill had been going for a while. But there weren't that many boutique festivals out there, and that's kind of where we launched. And I think we did book, or I did book, good lineups, and that did definitely help us. We for 5 or 6 years we absolutely flew because no one else was really competing, and then it got a bit more competitive.
Yeah, it feels around the early 2000s, festivals did become a lot more mainstream. There was soon about to be a festival for every niche and every market and every audience. So was there a point when it did feel like more of a competitive space? Did you have to adapt the concept and really up your game with everything you're doing to compete with that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we, as you said, we started in 2004, and we pretty much doubled our audience every year for the first 3 or 4 years. So we very quickly got up to like 35,000 people, and then kept going. And maybe with hindsight, we might have kept a little bit smaller. I just don't know. But suddenly we were booking Elton John and Stevie Wonder at our peak, and it felt amazing. But at the same time, like you say, festivals were becoming more mainstream. People's expectations were very high on the production levels, the toilets, which rightly so. And so suddenly all the costs were going up. There was, a lot more competition. Our tickets were still flying, but you could sort of see the writing on the wall that things were changing. And these sort of day shows, so the more sort of, and these are amazing festivals, by the way, that I love. But We're Art Festival, Park Life, even Creamfields, which have been going for longer than us. But these sort of day shows were becoming much more popular with the younger audience who just wanted to, go in for the day. They didn't want to sleep in a skanky tent and use our toilets and stuff. They wanted much higher levels of stuff. So I think that ate away at the market a little bit. But yeah, I mean, no excuses. I think Festival ran its course in a really amazing way, and kind of stopped at the right time, just to work just where it stopped.
So yeah, let's talk about Camp Bestival then. At what point did that idea come about?
Yeah, so it was only 4 years into Bestival, which seems mad. But yeah, we were in our sort of early 30s, and we started producing children, which was quite scary in its own right. But yeah, particularly living in a sort of festival lifestyle, we sort of thought, yeah, Festival's amazing, and but very, very racy and 24-hour party people for kids. So maybe there's a gap in the market, or not even a gap in the market. We just thought, let's start something for our own kids, and we were all having kids in all the sort of crew, and we were all just sort of similar age. So we just started it as an experiment, and again, we sort of seemed to hit a lucky streak, and quickly established ourselves as the sort of UK's leading family show, which we've never really lost. It's whereas Festival or festivals like that sort of seem to go up and down and in and out of popularity. I think when you hit something that's very genre specific and does a particular thing for a particular audience, then we're never going to run out of families and young children and teenagers who want to come because they want to go to a festival when they're old enough. And so far, weirdly, there's a few festivals out there, but not that many in that market. So yeah, 2008 we started that with pretty diverse lineup from Chuck Berry and PJ Harvey to Florence and the Machine and Bon Iver. So I was really proud of those lineups as well. A young Ed Sheeran playing in the woods to like 30 people, and things like that. It was really good to sort of branch off and to be running one very very kind of techno and racy festival and one sort of more wholesome family show.
So with when you started Camp Bestival, then did it feel like a risk? Was there many other festivals doing this type of event at that time?
There weren't really. No, it felt like a new market. It was things like WOMAD and then things like the Big Festival and stuff like that came up. But no, I don't know whether it's because it's such a high demanding show. The audience that come, many of them are coming. Well, we have a very good repeat audience, but the ones who aren't repeat audience are coming probably for their first ever festival. They're coming with young kids that don't want anything to go wrong. They want luxury and comfort. So I don't know if it's because of that other people are put off from that market, but yeah, we love sort of catering to that audience. But yeah, it definitely felt like a risk, and any festival is a risk. We've seen even Glastonbury in the last 10 years has nearly gone, nearly stopped for various reasons. So I don't think it matters what you're running. There's always a risk.
And I find the process of creating a festival really interesting in terms of taking the idea from a seed through to actually executing the event. When you are thinking of a new festival, what's the first starting point of that? Is it trying to find a music type that's uncatered for? Do you try and type an audience that's uncatered for? What's the process?
Well, I mean, we've been doing this for nearly 20 years now, and we've only really run two shows. Well, we did do a day show as well for a while called Common People, which was a sort of more of a cheaper ticket day show. But I mean, I don't have that many ideas of where we'd launch a new festival with a new concept. So the family one was our last great idea probably, and then expanding that into Shropshire, which we've done obviously this year, is our first big leap in a long time. I think probably our sort of risky 30s and carefree sort of 20s are a little bit behind us, and our sort of middle-aged 40s we're being a bit more cautious. And I think there are so many opportunities in the festival world, by the way, if people are listening and thinking, oh, maybe I'll get into it, but what are the angles? I think there's just so many, and you can see that with the wealth of great new festivals that are coming out. But personally, having Camp Bestival on its own is just almost more than we can handle anyway.
If you were to think about, if you were to start Camp Bestival from scratch in 2022, would it be as easy now, given how much things have changed since, was it 2008 that Camp Bestival started?
Yeah. Crikey, that's a good question. I don't know. I think the people, things like the councils and local authorities, back then were very, very in the dark on what on earth, even with Camp Bestival, it'd be like, oh God, there's going to be a rave on in the field and drugs and this and that. It's like, no, it's a family festival. You don't understand. So I think everyone now knows what festivals are, and it's easier in terms of that. But like I say, the sort of expectation from the audience is, it wasn't like we used to put in rubbish toilets, just because we thought we could. It's just that the level of toilets were more rubbish then. But things like that, and security, and having the right paperwork, and I imagine, well, I know because we run festivals still, but I imagine if you were coming into it now, you couldn't do it on a few $100,000. You need possibly a lot more money to get it off the ground.
And with so many things to think about from running an event, but also, looking back on a lot of the roles you've had in your career, you've wore many hats, and I think that's really interesting, and that it's give you this completely 360 view. And I think it's so important to understand how the whole festival ecosystem works to really get the most out of it. Do you think being a a jack of all trades is essential to success. And I don't mean that in the, it's often misquoted that it's a jack of all trades is a master of none, but the full quote actually reads often better than a master of one. Has it made you do anything differently? Have you found like it's been good to have that experience of all different angles?
I wish I'd known that was the real quote, because I always worry about doing too many things. Yeah, I'm really split on that. So, my old manager Ben and my Josie, my wife, and various people have said, Rob, we just rein it in, do less things. And every couple of years I have a bit of a cull, and I do get rid of little bits here and there. But then, like 3 years ago, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a meditation teacher. Bosh, here we go. Not just out of nowhere. I've been meditating for 2 decades, but there's other things that I want to do, and I do get bored. It's like my DJ sets. As anyone who's had the worrying experience of one of my DJ sets, I might be playing house and techno 1 minute, and then I'll just go into drum and bass and soul and sort of disco and stuff, and I don't tend to stick with one thing for too long. And as Josie would tell you, I'll go around the house, I'll start something over there and then go and do something over there. So it's just my personality is that I don't sort of sit still, but I don't regret that, because I've done so many brilliant things. I've sat behind the desk at Radio 1 with John Peel, Giles Peterson, Fabio and Groove Rider, and I've been in the field with Outcast and Missy Elliott. I've meditated with some amazing people, and I've signed some amazing records and seen people's careers take off. So it's all of those things add up, I suppose.
So you mentioned you don't sit still. Is that something that is where does that come from? Have you always been quite curious? Have you always been quite entrepreneurial? Have you always wanted to try new things? Is that something you've developed over time, or have you always had that in you?
Yes, it's always been there. I think like an eclectic taste of music. It's just doing a lot of things. But like I say, I don't know. I don't know if it's healthy or not. I do sort of love the idea of just doing one thing very, very well, rather than lots of things to about 80%. But yeah, it's always been part of my DNA.
I imagine with a festival, book an artist, it's good to understand what it is like on the artist side. Journalism, you need that to promote the festival, radio promotion, all of that really ties in. So do you feel that's played a part in the success of Bestival and Camp Bestival, the fact that you've understood how that works and how to get the most out of each area?
Yeah, I mean, I think with everything that me and Josie and our partners and our friends who helped out, everything that we learned, we piled together. It's I always see it as a big collaborative art project, rather than a business. We've never run it as a business. It's never been about the finances or selling a big amount of tickets or something. It's been like an art project, and you use people's best skills that different people have got, and some people are great in the art bit, some people are great on the finance bit, some people are great on the music bit. We sort of just get all that together, and I think my busy sort of eclectic brain has been good in terms of that, in terms of the lineup. So I can book the literary tent, I can book some of the food stuff, I can book the wellness stuff, I can book the headliners, I can book the tiny little skiffle band in a tiny tent, and sort of that all makes sense to me. I'm not fazed by that sort of scope of work.
So you've done with Bestival and Camp Bestival, it seems, well, I guess your whole career, it seems everything you've touched has turned to gold, but I'm sure there's been times when maybe projects didn't go to plan or things didn't turn out as you'd expected them. I do think it's inevitable, especially in an industry as ever-changing as festivals and events. How do you manage things like crisis or failure, or kind of pivoting into different directions when you need to? I imagine as a leader, I know you don't really like to treat it as a business, but big decisions are always landing on your plate. How do you know you've made the right one? Do you have frameworks or mantras that you try and use when it comes to big decision making and trying to pivot in moments of change or crisis?
Yeah, that's good good deep question, and I don't know the exact answer, but I suppose I don't really get phased by things as they come up. Well, I do, and I get stressed the same as everyone else, or worried about outcomes and feel people's pain and stuff. But equally, I find that I can normally work out some way of us getting through it. And yeah, we have had a lot of, personally for us and with the business, a lot of ups and downs that have had to be navigated. And sometimes you're in the eye of the storm and it just feels like you're never going to see, the sort of sunny horizon, and then you look back and you go, oh, right, we got through that, and that was actually quite a big deal. So yeah, I mean, without going into specifics, through the festivals, we've had some absolutely terrible times, and life and death times. So it's been pretty heavy at times. But yeah, you kind of know that it's part of the way the world's working, and try and move on in a positive way, and support staff, and work with people to get through those things. But I mean, yeah, I suppose in terms of a job and lifestyle and what you're doing, it's probably is a bit more risky than a 9 to 5 in an office, where those things aren't going to necessarily happen to you, and that's part and parcel of it. So you've got to be sort of tough enough to be able to roll with those punches.
And did there come a point as the team scaled up? Did you have more people in the business and on the projects that could help with those big decisions, and people who specialize in some areas from health and safety to sort of the finance, all those different areas?
We did, with varying degrees of success. So yeah, I mean, I yeah, mostly third party people that we work with that didn't always deliver. So some people are definitely in some industries for the money, and some people in it for the love. So I think that's how it normally works out. But yeah, I mean, like I say, from when me and Josie stood in that first field in 2004, very naive about what was, what an enterprise it was, to then, even a few years later, having health and safety and emergency services and finance coming out of our ears, and suddenly it's like a 365, business where you're at a desk running a festival, and it's like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up to be standing in a field with a cold pint of cider, like watching my favourite bands with my mates. That's what I thought running a festival was. But no, it's actually sitting at a desk, talking to bank managers, talking to the police, talking to people about trackway and plumbing stuff. So, but yeah, it's not as romantic as it always seems. But then hopefully you get the payoff with the eventual standing in a field with your family or your mates, seeing the glorious art project come to life.
What are some of the biggest highs that you've had since running events and festivals?
I mean, I'm not very good at blowing our own trumpets, but Elton John dedicating Rocket Man to me live on stage with his specially made festival glittery jacket. He hadn't done a festival for like 25 years or longer, and I don't know why he agreed it, but yeah, he flew in his jet black chopper. People were like marveling at this amazing helicopter circling the site, and then I got summoned to his porter cabin where he was sat in his shiny black Adidas tracksuit, kind of drinking a cup of tea, and so down to earth, and so yeah, things like that. And I didn't actually get to meet Stevie Wonder because I was too scared of meeting one of my idols. So but him coming over on the ferry and chatting to everyone on the ferry and being a complete laugh. Yeah, I mean, some of those, obviously the artist things, the Beastie Boys borrowing our golf buggy, nicking our handmade festival cardigans off us, and driving around the site in our buggy pretending to be us. Lots of those sort of things, but really, it's the being in amongst it, watching Aphex Twin, or sort of just being in a crowd at the right time at the right place, seeing people having a moment together, hearing about people getting married after festival or having babies or whatever. But yeah, those sort of bits are probably quite high on the high agenda.
That sounds incredible. I don't, I don't think I can ever top any of those stories, to be honest. Something you mentioned earlier on was wellness, and I know that's something that yourself and Josie do a lot of work in this space. Is that something that feeds into the way you kind of run festivals as a leader? Does that is that something that you really try and push in the workplace as well?
I mean, I'd love to say we've been like that since the beginning, but I mean, yeah, we've always been into wellness ourselves and always practiced yoga and meditation, but that hasn't, we've never tried to ram that down anyone's throat or make people, we also live a hedonistic lifestyle on the flip side of that. So it's always been a balance of those things. It's not like we're some Zen monks sitting in a cave, meditating. We're like party people who also like that more spiritual side. So I think a lot of our crew are sort of receptive to that as well. Our audience definitely have been. Bestival had one of the first wellness areas, probably from outside of Glastonbury, and yeah, I don't think everyone used it, but it was always there. But yeah, I think that's one of the best things about festivals these days is you've got as much emphasis on areas like that as you have on the music stages, and or you've got whole wellness festivals in their own. So it's it's incredible.
And at what point did you, how did you kind of get into the wellness space? When did that start to happen? Because there definitely was a shift, especially in terms of event programming, where that suddenly became a huge part of it.
Yeah, I mean, me and Josie learnt to meditate when we were kind of at the peak of our first sort of wave of stuff with Radio One and all that stuff. So, and then we kind of got probably got a little waylaid off that, but we always practiced yoga, and then we probably when we started Bestival, we thought it'd be really great to have that to reflect that side of things. And at Camp Bestival, and this year we've just gone up a tier with Wim Hof ice baths and paddle boarding and wild swimming, and I really love programming that area and curating that area with Josie, because there's just so much that you can do in that space.
And when you, if you take a step back and just look at everything you've done so far, from radio to DJ to journalism to festivals, would you change anything? Has there been any big lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of lessons. Yeah. I mean, I'd be lying if I said. Yeah, I mean, that's so many business decisions. Stop this earlier, start that earlier. Don't work with that person. Do work with this person. Yeah, and I've got my own, kind of not faults, but yeah, well, obviously faults. But I've got my own mistakes that I know that I've made, and that have affected people. So yeah, I'm going to write a book one day, but not that anyone will read it. But where I'll sort of delve into that and find out how I could have done things better and different. But in terms of the actual career choices on the actual surface, no, I mean, I wouldn't still be doing pretty much all those things. I'm still doing the same things that I started doing when I was 18, 20. So there's nothing that I'm doing that I don't love. And that's the beauty kind of being your own boss, I suppose, as well, and being lucky enough that, at an early age, I sort of, or an early teenage, in my early 20s, I discovered that I could do stuff for myself and I didn't have to be reliant on someone else, which is a great feeling, and obviously something that so many people have now, that they want to work for themselves and not that it's someone else's beck and call, but that's, I know that's, I feel very lucky.
I know you don't like blowing your own trumpet, but I find your journey super inspiring. And what we try and do with this podcast is understand what the secrets to success have been. And I think it's only you that's been through your journey, and I think it's you that's made it so successful. Have you got any secret to success? Is there anything that stands out to you of reasons why you think you've been so successful with all of your ventures?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lovely way to phrase it. I don't feel I've been so successful with all of my ventures at all, and there's definitely an ongoing process there on a lot of the projects that I do. But yeah, in terms of you know, I don't want to come to some simple mantra like work hard, play hard, but I think you know, my dad had a very not strict work ethic, but you know, we weren't really allowed to watch TV. We were always helping out. We were always helping other people. We were always, you know, in the garden at 9 o'clock at night doing jobs and getting stuck into stuff. And I resented it at the time, but I really, you know, treasure it now because it gave me a real work ethic. I can't sort of sit around doing nothing. You know, I sort of want to get stuck into things, and I think that gives you the energy and enthusiasm, and hopefully fires up the troops that you're kind of working with to do that. And I won't, you know, I won't give up on stuff. I'll keep going with projects. So I do feel that, you know, that wasn't something I created. That was built into me by my dad probably. Second to that, you know, I touched on it earlier. The in what's it called, work placement kind of. It was called work experience back in my day, but but yeah, I think, you know, going and experiencing what you want to do, and then not being slack about it. You know, get stuck in and, you know, be enthusiastic. And if that's really what you want to do, you know, you've got a lot of people probably to beat to get to that final job. So you're going to have to, you know, be the best. So, you know, and I definitely wasn't the best radio broadcaster. I definitely was not the best DJ by a long straw. I wasn't the best festival promoter, but I kind of stuck at them and turned up every day and made sure that, you know, I didn't let anyone down, and that I was always kind of as helpful as possible. And, you know, when you might be gritting your teeth and going, "Oh, sod off, I'm not making you another cup of tea," you'd go and make that cup of tea and you'd give them a biscuit and a big smile and go, "There you are, sir." And, you know, and that sort of stuff does pay off. It's very annoying at the time, but, you know, you don't have to, you don't have to, you know, be a complete creep, but just, you know, turning up, doing the job and doing it really well is often half the battle, I found.
It's a good point. It's almost like you need to be humble enough to try all of those roles, and be humble enough to you know, treat every day as a day of education, and not say, "Oh, I'm not doing that because I run the festival now." It's, you have to understand all of those angles, I think, to really know how to get the most out of it. You did mention a book before, which I thought was super interesting. What does the future hold? What's your end goal with all of this? Is there anything left on your bucket list to tick off?
Yeah. Well, as Josie will tell you, I'm not very good at. I tend to live in the present, and I don't mean that in some hippy dippy way. But that's just my mindset. Is I don't really dwell on the past. I don't tend to think about what might happen in the future. Obviously, I plan stuff, and particularly business stuff. But I don't know. I mean, you know, will I still be doing festivals in 10 years? I've got no idea. You know, will I be writing a book? Will I be a sailing instructor in the West Indies? Will I be, you know, sitting in a cave meditating somewhere? I just have no idea. But I mean, you've got 4 kids to bring up. You know, that's probably one of the most well, it is the most crucial thing in my life, and get them through their first part of their lives. But I mean, yeah, I love teaching meditation. That's probably the most fulfilling thing that I do. I love seeing people go from very stressed out, anxious, you know, just people living in this sort of tumble dryer, and sort of coming out feeling a lot better about that. And, you know, so things like that are probably the most key to me. But yeah, I mean, Camp Bestival, obviously we've just launched our second show, so that's obviously a big priority for us, and we love that, you know, more than anything in the business world. And yeah, you know, DJ a bit. The book, I did actually write 2 pages last week, so but I think it's more of a diary for myself than an actual book I want published, because I got, if I was totally honest, it would be a lot of people that would probably be quite angry with me. So I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day.
I know, I hope it does. Yeah, I'd love to delve deeper. But yeah, listen, thank you so much for taking up the time to jump on with us today, Robbie. It's been so interesting to hear of everything you've achieved so far, and it's also been a pleasure to work with you guys on Camp Bestival up in Shropshire as well, and excited to see where we can take that next. And also from experience, working with yourself and the team, you are some of the most creative people I've ever worked with, and I always come away from all of our meetings feeling super inspired, and I love to see all of the processes behind everything that you do.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, yeah, I mean, without blowing smoke, then we love working with you guys because you've given us some fresh ideas after 14 years of us stumbling around. So yeah, it's been great, and thanks for listening to me for an hour. And thank you to anyone that's still listening now. Go out and get at it, whatever it is you want to do.
Oh, brilliant. Nice one. And I won't let you not finish the book. I'll be on your case about that one.
Oh, crikey. 2 pages in, 300 to go.
Oh, brilliant. Anyway, have a great day, Robbie, and we'll catch up very soon.